Hi, fourth graders. This is Miss Ellis, and today I am going to be teaching you lesson 7.1. Students convert between cups, pints, quarts, and gallons. Today our vocabulary words that we're going to see are gallon, which usually we think of as gallons of milk, cup, pint, and a quart, if you've ever seen those little quarts of milk. Okay, this is a visual that we can use when we're converting between gallons, quarts, pints, and cups. This is Mr. Gallon. He shows us how many quarts are in a gallon, how many pints are in a gallon, how many cups are in a gallon, and kind of breaks it down. There's another visual in this lesson that I tend to use more and I like better, but some people really like Mr. Gallon and it makes a lot of sense to them. So if you like Mr. Gallon, you think he's really cool looking and he'll help you remember these conversions, by all means, please use Mr. Gallon when you are doing your work. And you can find him in this lesson and in our PowerPoint slides that I will put up. So today I am going to skip over the mental math. I would really like you to do it on your own. I just know that this lesson is going to take me a little bit more time and I know it's going to upload as a big file. So when I put these slides up, please go in and do the mental math. Remember that we're adding fractions. In this slide, they have the same denominator. In this slide, they have different denominators, so you're going to have to make the denominators the same. And also in this slide, which we know is the hardest slide, they have different denominators, so you're going to have to make the denominators the same before you add them. So I'm just going to skip over that, but I would really like you to go back and complete the mental math because it's really good for warming up our brain before a lesson. All right. So if we were in school, we would be completing the math message at the top of journal page 228. We obviously don't have our journal, so I'm going to go through this with you. So this is the diagram that I really like to use. This is what I call the big G. So in this diagram, the big G represents gallons. So that's why it's a big G, G for gallons. And then within the big G, there are 4 Qs, which represent quarts. So there are 4 quarts in a gallon, within each Q, there are 2 Ps, which represent pints. So there are 2, 4, 6, 8 pints in 1 gallon, or 2 pints in 1 quart. And within each P, there are 2 Cs, which represent cups. So there are 2 cups within each pint, or 2, 4 cups in a quart, or 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 cups in 1 gallon. So if we are going to fill out this math message, in 1 pint, how many cups are there? So I'm going to go over to the side. I'm going to look at my P, which is for pint, and I'm going to see how many C's are inside. So in 1 pint, there are 2 cups. In 1 quart, or a Q for quart, how many pints are there, or how many P's are there in my Q? In my Q, or my quart, there are 2 pints. Now here's a half gallon and a whole gallon. Let's do the whole gallon first. So in my whole gallon, or my big G, how many quarts or Q's are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. In a half gallon, so if I split my G in half, or I divide this by 2, there are 2 quarts. So there are 4 quarts in a whole gallon and 2 quarts in a half gallon. Okay, and that's just showing you our answers. So what does the diagram, the big G next to the math message problem, represent? It's showing us that 1 gallon equals 4 quarts, 1 quart equals 2 pints, and 1 pint equals 2 cups. We just went over that. So now we're looking at a measurement scale and our big G. So some people may prefer the big G, like myself. This makes a lot of sense to me. And we have used measurement scales many times during our conversions. And I also like measurement scales because it shows us across larger numbers. So this is just showing me 1 gallon. I can see that there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon easier here, but on my measurement scale, I can easily see that in 5 gallons or 5 of these pictures, there would be 20 quarts or 20 Qs. The same thing here. I can easily see from my big G that in 1 quart, there are 2 pints or 2 Ps. And on my measurement scale, when the numbers get larger, I can easily see that in 5 quarts or 5 Qs, there are going to be 10 pints or 10 Ps. And the same goes for the last line of pints and cups. How are these two representations alike? They both show the relationship between the units. So we're in both the picture and the scale, we're seeing the relationship between gallons, quarts, pints, and cups. How are they different? One is a measurement scale, one is a drawing. So now you really have 3 options for what you want to use when you're converting. You can use Mr. Gallon, who we saw in the beginning. You can use the big G, which is my favorite, but it might not be your favorite, or you could use a measurement scale. So a lot of options for you. Okay, this is the journal page we would complete if we were in school, but I'm gonna run through this with you together. I'm just gonna do a few for each, and then we're gonna look at all the answers. So feel free, you can pause this video and try to figure it out on your own. You can look at the slides that I post separately and try to fill it out there, or you could just go along with me. So let's look at the first one. In 1 pint, how many cups are there? So I'm gonna look at my diagram. In 1 pint, which is a P, I see there are 2 C's, so 1 pint equals 2 cups. How many cups are there in 2 pints? So 2 P's, I'm gonna count the C's on the inside. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 cups. For 3 pints, 1, 2, 3. How many C's are inside? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 cups. I'm starting to see a pattern. I'm seeing that when I go from pints to cups, I can multiply by 2. And we know that when we're converting, if we're going one way and multiplying, to go back the other way, if we're going from cups to pints, we're going to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. And we're going to, that's a terrible division sign, and we're going to divide by 2, okay? So if I go here and I use this trick, I know 5 times 2 is 10. So there are 10 cups in 5 pints. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 P's, and I count the C's inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I know I'm correct. There are 10 cups in 5 pints, or 10 C's in 5 P's. And for here, for 16 cups, I'm going to divide by 2 because I'm going the other way. So I'm going to get 8. So there are 8 pints in 16, or 16 cups in 8 pints. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And these 8 P's in my gallon, if I count these C's, I will get 16 and know I'm correct. Let's move on to B. For quarts, in 1 quart, or 1 Q, there are 1, 2 pints. In 2 quarts, or 2 of my Q's, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pints. In 3 quarts, or 3 of my Q's, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pints. So I'm starting to notice the same pattern. When I go from quarts to pints, I can multiply by 2. And that means when I go the other way, from pints to quarts, I do the opposite, and I divide by 2. So if I'm going from pints to quarts, 14 pints, I would divide by 2, and I would get 7. So there are 14 pints in 7 quarts, excuse me. When I go from 9 quarts to pints, I'm going to multiply by 2. So 9 times 2 is 18. And 13 times 2 is 26. Okay, so I can use my visual, or once I start seeing a pattern, I can figure out what I'm multiplying and dividing by. So gallons to quarts. In 1 gallon, or 1 big G, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 quarts. If I had a second picture, or another big G, I'd have 4 more Qs. So then in 2 Gs, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 quarts. If I drew a third picture and I had 4 more quarts, I'd have 4, 8, 12. So I'm noticing another pattern. Instead of multiplying by 2, like we did up here, when I go from gallons to quarts, I'm multiplying by 4. And that means when I go from quarts to gallons, I'm doing the opposite of multiplication. I'm dividing. So I'm going to be dividing by 4. So 36 divided by 4 is 9, because I'm going the other way. And then 15 times 4 is 60. So if I'm going from gallons to quarts, I'm multiplying by 4. If I'm going from quarts to gallons, I'm dividing by 4. Now let's go to our last one, quarts to cups. So in 1 Q, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 cups. In 2, went back a little. Okay. Oh no. All right, well, since this all got erased and we're on the last one, let's go here. In 1 quart, we saw there were 4 cups. That's what I was getting to. I apologize that it got erased. In 3 quarts, there were 12 cups. In 5 quarts, there are 20 cups. So I'm actually seeing another pattern that so here I went to get from pints to cups, I multiplied by 2. To get from quarts to pints, I was multiplying by 2. To get from gallons to quarts, I was multiplying by 4. And to get from quarts to gallons, to get from quarts to cups, I'm also multiplying by 4. Which means that if I was going from cups to quarts, I would do the opposite of multiplication and divide by 4. Which means that when they asked me this last one, 40 cups, I would divide by 4 and I would get 10 quarts. So I know there are 40 cups in 10 quarts. All right, our first problem. Joan has a quart of frozen yogurt. How many pints does she have? If she had 4 quarts, how many pints would she have? So Joan has 1 quart of frozen yogurt, or 1 Q. How many pints does she have? If she has 1 quart, let's figure out how many C's are in 1, or how many P's are in 1 Q. 1, 2. So in 1 quart, she has 2 pints. If she had 4 quarts, how many pints would she have? So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 Q's. How many pints are in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She would have 8 pints. How does knowing there are 2 pints in 1 quart help you solve this? So we can either look at our diagram to figure this out, or if we know that there are 2 pints in every quart, we can multiply by 2. So if she had 4 quarts, we multiply by 2 and we get 8. If she has 1 quart, and we know there are 2 pints in each quart, we multiply by 2 and we get 1 times 2 is 2. Our second example. Maisha wants to make chicken soup for dinner. The recipe calls for 2 pints of water, but she only has a cup to measure with. How many cups does she need for the recipe? So Maisha wants to make chicken soup. The recipe calls for 2 pints, or 2 P's of water, but she only has a measuring cup. So how many C's are in these 2 P's? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 cups in 2 pints. How many cups would there be in 8 pints? Well, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. and count the C's, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Or I know that when I go from 2 pints to 4 cups, I'm multiplying by 2. So when I go from 8 pints to see how many cups are there, I can multiply by 2. So 8 times 2 is 16. So I can either use this drawing or I can figure out my multiplication. So we know there are 4 cups and 16 cups. What would happen if we converted from our smaller unit of capacity, such as pints, to a larger unit of capacity, such as quarts? So when we go from a small unit to a larger unit, the number gets smaller. It takes a smaller number of larger units to represent the same capacity. And then what happens when we go from a larger unit of capacity, such as gallons, to a smaller unit, such as quarts? So when we go from a bigger unit to a smaller unit, the numbers get bigger because it takes a bigger number of smaller units to represent the same capacity. And we've done this a few times in school. It's usually when we're doing conversions, it's usually the opposite. When we're going from a smaller unit to a bigger unit, the number gets smaller, and we're going from a bigger unit to the smaller units, the number gets bigger. It's always the opposite. Okay, here's our last one. In 2014, the largest chocolate fountain in the world circulated 1,800 gallons of chocolate in an hour. If 200 gallons of the chocolate were consumed, how many quarts would be left? So what do I need to do first? The first thing I need to do is find out how many gallons would be left, and then I can convert that into quarts. So I know we started with 1,800 gallons. It's a lot of chocolate. And then if 200 gallons were consumed or eaten, I take 200 away. So 1,800 minus 200, or if I just got rid of these zeros, 18 minus 2 is 16. And then let's add these zeros back in. So 1,600 gallons. And then I need to convert that into quarts. So I know that 1 gallon equals 4 quarts, because I can see that here. One of my big G's equals 4 Q's. So I know that to get from 1,600 gallons and to find out the number of quarts, I'm going to have to multiply by 4. Now, 1,600 times 4 seems like a lot. But like we did before, if I just hold on to these zeros for a minute and I did 16 times 4 and I do my math, 16 plus 16 plus 16 plus 16, or 16 times 4 is 64. I add back in my 2 zeros. So how many quarts would she have left? She'd have 6,400 quarts left. How can we use either the diagram or measurement scale to determine the number of quarts left over? We can use the diagram or measurement scale to determine the relationship between the gallons and the quarts, and then use that to find the number of quarts. So we're just looking at the relationship. We're looking at how many quarts are in a gallon, how many pints are in a quart, how many cups are in a pint, and that helps us figure out this math. All right, so that's it for my lesson right now. I know that it takes a little while to help figure out what diagram you like best, to kind of get it right in your mind. I put this video at the end of the PowerPoint slides that I will put up, and it's about the Kingdom of Galan. It's another great representation that they turn into a story. It's also really helpful for me. So you can use that. Remember, we have gallon man, we have big G, we have the measurement scale. So you choose what's best for you and get to practicing and filling out your exit ticket. Please let me, Mrs. Cohn, Mrs. Kempen know if you have any questions, and I will see you next time for our next lesson. Bye.